Hyderabad has a long history of grappling with floods, dating back to the catastrophic inundation of 1908, which is said to have tragically claimed over 50,000 lives, which is an unofficial number, but the official figure is 15,000. And to mitigate the risk, the city implemented preventive measures like the construction of Osman Sagar and Himayat Sagar reservoirs. Now, fast forward to August 2000. It was another dark chapter in Hyderabad's history when incessant rainfall of 240 millimeter in one day unleashed one of the city's worst calamities. Today, Hyderabad is at risk during any rainy season, whether it is light or heavy. Now, Hyderabad faces two monsoons with the danger of flooding. It has been raining heavily since early yesterday morning, which was September 5. Everywhere in the city, there was traffic jams and flooding. The situation was same in other districts of the states as well. These recent flooding reminds us that dealing with rain-related problems in Hyderabad has become much harder. This leads us to ask a few questions to Professor B.V. Subbarao, who has over 40 years of experience in rural, urban, and industrial watershed management, groundwater, and climate change projects. Professor, thank you for joining. My first question to you is, how have floods in Hyderabad evolved from 1908 to 2023, and is this a result of natural factors or human activities?
Yeah, it's interesting. You see, the there's a drastic change, evolution of flood pattern in Hyderabad. 1908 was the typical river flood along the floodplains of the river. When the river water overflows, it flows on the either banks of the river. That is the general scientific thing where all the cities or human habitation are settled along the rivers experienced since centuries. Interestingly, what happened in Hyderabad, particularly, the flood pattern has changed over a period from 1908 to 223, and this change in the flood pattern started early 90s only. So we had more man-made floodings within the city, and the water is not reaching to the river. So that is the biggest problem. Hyderabad has an undulating terrain, and by virtue of its physiographic and geographic geomorphological feature, and many rivers in a sub-basin manage were designed. So today, what's happening is the sub-basins, the lakes, the upper lake when it gets filled up, it flows to the down lake. It's a cascade system. Today, the entire network has been disturbed, destroyed, and you find more decentralized, lake-centered flooding. So the waters around the lakes, the houses around the lakes, habitations around the lakes are getting inundated. And it becomes on the size of the lake, the volume of the water, which is expected to go into the lake from one lake to the other, is overflowing on the land. So entire natural drainage pattern which Hyderabad was designed is disturbed, destroyed by the people, the so-called modern engineers, without understanding the very drainage pattern and flood mechanisms of the historical city. It's totally a man-made disaster.
So, if it is a totally man-made disaster, if man-made factors significantly contribute to Hyderabad's flooding, what specific aspects of urban development and governance do you think play a role?
You see, the whole problem is we do not have a proper urban planning in the country, and urban planning guidelines are expected to be given by the central government, and that is the practice everywhere. And the guidelines issued by the central government needs to be re-adopted to suit the local climate and geomorphological conditions, topographical conditions of that particular city and the state by the state government, which never happens. There is a, absolutely, we have neglected the urban planning right from the day one, I say. And more priority was given to the rural development, yes, that deserved. But we know where the rural development stands today and where the urban development stands today. We have played a total injustice to both the sectors. Coming to the urban development and urban planning, urban planning in academics as well as in the practice is only observed as a zoning mechanism. This is an industrial area, this is the residential area, this is what our urban planning does not have an integrated hydrology in it. So all our urban planning and development, they subsequently aggravate the action on the action of the water on the land. So simple logic, I tell you, when it rains, it has to rain on the land. Yes.
Yeah,
So it has to find its way to a lower gradient and join some lake or the river.
yeah,
So the land use pattern, urban planning changes the land use from an agriculture to concretization, from an horticulture to concretization. The moment we concretize, more water will flow and no water will get into the ground. So runoff increases, flooding increases, time of concentration increases. Because you see today, within no time, the low-lying areas are getting inundated. It increases, concretization increases 8 to 10 times the velocity of the surface water or the flood waters. And we are not talking anything in the urban planning on urban hydrology. So how can you? I tell you, Ms. Nisha, the human civilization started on the banks of river. Yes or no?
yeah,
Indus Valley
absolutely.
civilization. This yes,
Any
where there
civilization started in yeah,
where there is water, there was civilization,
yeah,
and it evolved over a period of time. Yes,
mhm, yeah,
and today every city which is located on the river systems, for some time they've suffered for want of water. There was a lot of water shortage in Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai. Okay, and today the same cities are suffering from flooding. So where the things are going wrong? So I blame that our urban planning is totally nonsense. It needs to be reviewed, and right from the academic level, it needs to be reoriented and directed towards the course corrections. How do we make our cities a water resilient, rain resilient, You see, we don't know, none of the urban planners talk of, only urban planner talks of highways, this way, that way. I do not know. But human civilization and water has an umbilical relationship. So you cannot separate it out. Then how could you build a planning without this umbilical relation? So today there is something drastically gone wrong in Indian uh, planning and development. And planning and development does not go in hand coordination also. Please.
Okay. There has been several warnings, and even the pattern, the flooding pattern is quite evident if we take even Hyderabad for that matter. So why hasn't the city's flood management infrastructure adapted to increasing flood frequency and the severity?
Yeah, one thing you see, uh, every year, last 7 years, I'm conducting a workshop before the monsoon. Is the city rain ready? Is the city rain ready? Or are we rain ready? Okay? There is no answer for me. In Hindi, we used to organize the similar exercises in Bihar. फिर से बाढ़ आएगी जागते रहो. We are living in a vulnerable condition on a fragile ecosystems. We are not sure what happens during the, as if we are living on the moment of an earthquake. This, I also raise a question that we often hear of, traffic control, traffic regulation, flyover, subways, this way, that way, the entire infrastructure for traffic. Yes.
Yeah.
Where is the infrastructure for water in this country? Is anybody talking on water infrastructure? You see, sewage water. Now everybody says, "Arey, 5 millimeters of rainfall, entire sewage is joining in it." Yes, it's going hand in hand. Ganga Jamuna Sangam is happening between the sewage and the fresh water. In Chennai, the water, the Chennai which is on the coastal line, the flood waters cannot reach the sea because the the centralized dump yard is a big obstacle. So this is a
Okay.
very unfortunate thing. We do not have a proper education system, and we only talk of you see that we can manage anything. No, we cannot manage. Things have gone beyond our control.
Professor Subaru, I actually have to agree with you. You know, things doesn't resolve itself. So, which brings me to my next question: does the government have effective flood prevention plans for a city of Hyderabad's urbanization level? And what strategies could be employed to reduce flood risk? And if I may, can we extend this question to to cover other cities as well, Bombay, Bengaluru, Chennai? What strategies could be employed to reduce flood risk?
You see, number one, before we go into the planning aspect, review it and reorient it, identify the mistakes where in the planning it's going on and all. Government of India, National Institute of Disaster Management, in 2012 came out with the guidelines on urban flooding mitigation. It gave a clear guidelines that everything must be done on watershed basis, natural drainage basis assessments, and all the water bodies in urban areas must be treated as flood regulating structures. Okay, the role of a water body is quite important and vital in the 21st century because all the flood waters must be regulated through the existing lakes or the water bodies of any city. Every city is uh, is threatened the lives of the every city, and the cities which flourished on the river banks perished in the river floods in the history. Yes, be it Ayodhya, be it or any other thing, they have vanished. Today, the threat is these flood waters of the urban areas, flooding waters, are not fresh flooding waters. They are contaminated waters from the industrial zones. I wrote a
Mm.
book on
Okay.
urban planning without hydrology. And today, flooding is happening in Hyderabad and Bangalore, which is a landlocked area, Chennai and Mumbai, which are coastal cities, Kerala, mid-altitude, cities, and mad tourism. And today, we are also experiencing the disasters last 6 to 7 years from higher Himalayas.
Yeah.
Then where is the path went wrong? Don't blame the climate change. There is no water infrastructure right from Chennai to Joshimath. So country has to open its eyes, review it, the developmental planning, and come out with more sustainable planning and make the city and the country a livable place. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your inputs, Professor Subbarao. Viewers, for more such interesting interviews, log on to thefederal.com. Also follow us on our social media pages. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.